Viewers, let's in fact also tell you that according to Iranian state media, the number of people killed in the strike on a girls' school in the southern Iranian city of Minab has now risen to 118. The attack targeted the Shajar Tayyabe girls' elementary school amid a massive US-Israeli offensive that began Saturday morning. Iranian strikes also hit the famous Burj Al Arab in Dubai. Online videos show part of the iconic building on fire. However, all present in the building were evacuated. All right, let's go back to Ambassador Fabian, who's there with us in the discussion. Ambassador, what do you make of Iran's retaliatory strikes in Dubai, in the UAE, where there is really no airbase of the US?
I beg your pardon. I do not approve of Iranians bombing or sending missiles or drones to Dubai or UAE. In fact, you mentioned the hotel, 7-star hotel. That I do not approve of. But there is an airbase of the United States in that area.
Okay.
So in fact, the United States has bases practically in all the GCC countries, you see. And Iranians had made it clear that if they are attacked, they will retaliate by targeting Israel and all American interests in the area. So this was going to happen. That was very clear. But again, I do not endorse it. But, you have to look at the bigger picture.
All right, Ambassador, thanks very much. Viewers, let's in fact now. In fact, I'm also joined in by Ambassador Sushil Singhal, a former diplomat in this discussion. Ambassador Singhal, thanks very much for joining us. What's your assessment of the current situation of the Iranian regime as of now? Do you think it's the beginning of the collapse of the Islamic Republic, or do you see the Revolutionary Guards filling in the ranks quickly towards the latest situation?
Well, at this moment, I would say it's very too early to predict how the Iranian the regime is going to take change, because as we all know that they have announced a temporary leadership council, which includes president, judiciary chief, and unnamed guardian council cleric. What I would wait to see is that, that how, first of all, who is selected as a guardian council cleric. It will show who is calling shots in the system. And then I think there is going to be a assembly of experts, 88 clerics are there. So we have to see who attends that. And of course, also how the tone of the state media goes, whether it shifts to security or to the clerics. So that will be the indication how Iranian leadership or the clerics are moving, and which faction, because now it is sort of, in my view, it has become sort of an open arena. And IRGC, as I see, is going to be the look like a main player, because they are the one who have all the levers at this moment. So how they're going to react, and what I've heard is that the brigadier general, of course, it's not confirmed as yet, but the brigadier general Mahmoud, I think, he has been appointed as the IRGC chair, the commander, and who is said to be a hardliner. And if it is so I see that, IRGC, getting the grip of the situation, and we may see, something unexpected happening, which was not, I think, planned for by the US or the Israeli side. But something to be seen in future. At the moment, I think it's all guess.
All right, sure. In fact, viewers, the Qatari Ministry of Interior is now saying that 8 additional injuries have been recorded following the Iranian strikes, bringing the total number of injuries since the onset of the attack to 16. It said there has also been limited material damage in various areas. Let's go to Ambassador KP Fabia, who's there with us in this discussion. Ambassador Fabia, Of course, there are celebrations for the takedown of the killer regime of Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, but what will and who will account for the civilian casualties that are being reported from the Gulf states? Ambassador Fabian is not there with us. I'll take that question to Abhijit Iyer Mitra, a senior fellow at the Institute of Peace and Conflict Studies, who's joined us in this discussion.
Repeat the question again, please.
Who will account for the civilian casualties that have taken place in the Gulf states now? Of course, there is a celebration for the killing of Khamenei and, you know, the dictatorial regime that he was running. There are celebrations that are being held across the world. Many condemnations are also coming in. In fact, Australian Prime Minister has also said that Khamenei's death will not be mourned. So that is a sentiment that's being echoed from across the world. But what about the civilian casualties that you know, that are rising now?
I think it's a bit tone deaf for these foreigners to be commenting on it. Australia might not be mourning for Khamenei, sorry, but my Telegram channels are full of huge protests in Tehran mourning him, and these aren't just, you know, hijabi women and bearded ayatollahs mourning him. There are ordinary people, secular Iranians who barely wear a scarf, coming out onto the streets with hand-drawn portraits of Khamenei and mourning him. We should never confuse their anger with the regime for their nationalism. Iranians are fundamentally nationalists at the core, number one. Number two, with the civilian deaths that have happened, there seems to be a very consistent pattern now of Iran targeting civilian targets in Dubai, in Bahrain, especially Dubai and Bahrain, more so than Kuwait. Kuwait, they have targeted the airport, but Bahrain and the UAE are somehow seen in Iran as being complicit with the Israelis in what they've done, because remember, both these countries especially have had very, very close ties with, have built up very, very close ties with Israel over the past 8 years since the Abraham Accords were signed. 6, 8 years, I forget now. But what we need to understand out here is civilian targeting never works. Leave aside the war crime part of it. It is done as panic. And the moment we had confirmation of the civilian targeting, it started with the targeting, the drone attack on the Fairmont Palm Jumeirah yesterday evening. At that time, we thought, you know, it was a stray missile, or it was a missile that had gone off course. But then when the high-rise in Manama, Bahrain were attacked, the Burj Al Arab was also attacked, the Burj Khalifa, both the iconic hotels of Dubai were attacked and things like that, we realized that this is actually very deliberate targeting, and it is usually a sign of panic. And we know why, because clearly the command structure has broken down and the lower levels of the leadership are directing attacks, revenge attacks very specifically against civilian targets. Now understand, Iran has a depleting reserve of drones and ballistic missiles. To use them against civilian targets, which produces no military results, is almost criminal expenditure in my way, even from an Iranian point of view. But that said, Iran also has a use it or lose it dilemma. When you feel under severe pressure, you think all is lost or close to being lost. You then think, what do I do with my weapons? Do I use them for what they were intended for? Or do I just sit pretty and, cling on to principles and do nothing about it? I think they've decided to use them. It's also very telling how Israel has managed to intercept all the drones, not the ballistic missiles, the drones. But they haven't, the Gulf countries haven't been so successful, even though they've got a sea, which it is easier to track over than absent clutter, than it is over land. So there's lots of lessons to be taken away. I suspect we're going to see an increase in civilian targeting by the Iranians over today and tomorrow.
All right. Stay on with the me, view.